Hello everyone, my name is Zuhdi and I'm going to be representing myself and Elgar because we are the CAP of UDU-DC 2021 and I'm going to be delivering debate briefing. This presentation is not originally made by us, so credit to CAPEIA 2021, which I was also a part of. Directly jump to the content. So how is the debate flow of British parliamentary debate system, the system that we're going to use for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow? So there will be two sides opposing against one another, the government side and the opposition side. In each side, we will have two benches. So in government side, we will have opening government and closing government. And in opposition side, we will have the opening opposition and closing opposition team. For every benches, we will have two speakers. So 2 times 4, there will be 8 speakers in the room. And for every benches, they will be going against one another. So they will not be cooperating. They will not be doing joint case building session. Opening government still need to be closing government and vice versa. Opening opposition needs to still be closing opposition and vice versa. And yeah, that's how the debate flow of BP will be. So the team will be ranked from the first, second, third, and fourth rank. First rank will get 3 victory points. Second rank will get 2 victory points. Third rank will get 1 victory point. And the fourth rank, unfortunately, gets 0 victory point. The time to speak is 7 minutes and 20 seconds. The judge will remind you in minute 1, minute 6, minute 7, and minute 7:20. Minute 1 and 6 will be open for point of interruption or POI. And I think POI needs to be encouraged in this competition for the sake of engagement and simulating a lot of previous competition in which POI is heavily counted in the consideration of the judge. So that's how the debate flow. Give POI and receive POI. There will be adjudicators. Adjudicators might deliberate who will get the first to the fourth rank. Sometimes adjudicators are also proceed the voting process when there is a time limit or there is a deadlock. Next, speaker rules. In opening bench, basically what you need to do in the prime minister and leader of opposition, the first speaker of opening bench, you should prove your stance is correct in the debate. So in prime minister, you might want to present model if needed. Leader opposition, you should choose either you want to stick with the status quo or an improved status quo or a new counterfactual. Let's look at the example of this house would ban zoos. So in the government side of the house, as the prime minister, you might want to say that our stance is clear for anyone that still want to establish zoo. We're going to punish them, send them to prison, impose financial sanctions to them. And in leader of opposition, you might choose to either you want to stick with the status quo in which zoos are still existing, or you might want to choose an improved status quo that you don't want to ban zoos. You want to stick with the status quo, but an improved zoos facility, improve animal welfare protection, and so on. Or you can present a new counterfactual. We don't want to have zoos, but what we want to have is probably the new modern zoos that will be only managed by the government. So that's the new counterfactual that you can also opt into. Next thing to be pointed out is the important points as the prime minister and leader of opposition. You might start with the argument you believe is the most important for the debate. So choose the most intuitive one or choose the type of argument that will benefit as much as individuals as possible in terms of the scale of the impact, or you might want to present an argument that can protect the most vulnerable communities. If leader of opposition wants to also provide key response to prime minister, not only it is allowed, it's also heavily encouraged. So that's for the first speaker. For the second speaker, for the deputies, you need to provide additional unique reasons to support your stance. So don't repeat what your first speaker have been saying. So if your first speaker have been explaining about the practical consideration of the debate, then in the second speaker, you might want to explore the principal grounds of the motion. You might also want to conclude of the opening debate analysis. So you might explain that because my first speaker have explained A, B, C, and I already explained D, E, F. This is already very comprehensive, and any other analysis that closing bench might want to present is possibly derivative of what we have explained. Therefore, we deserve to win. So that's how opening speakers might want to act in the debate. Next, POIs. POIs are maximum 15 seconds. The shorter, the better. Remember, that's point of interaction, point of interruptions, not points of interruption. So try as best to only ask one question and be as direct as possible. Then don't just put out statements. Don't say, but we already explained this, this, and this. And then you stop at that. No, don't do that. Try to be as direct as possible, explaining what is your opinion about our analysis on this, or don't you think that these arguments still stand? Okay, or how do you navigate the tension that you have on these points? I think that's a more direct, shorter, better POI sentence that you can deliver. A speaker is required to take at least one POI. A team is also recommended to take one POI from opening and one from closing. The inability or the refusal to take POIs and deliver or offer POI can hurt speaker scores. It can hurt team placements in close calls, especially between diagonals. Diagonals mean CO and OG, OO and CG, because it's not fair for opening government if closing opposition have arguments and opening government is not allowed to ask for clarification or ask for engagement to closing opposition, because that's the only way that they can engage to the diagonal team that they oppose. So be charitable. It will increase your value of engagement. It will also possibly can win you the debate if you can answer the POIs accurately. So that's the POI policy. Motions. Teams will have 15 minutes to prepare after motion release, at which point the round begins. Proposition has fiat to implement policy. No arguments about how hard it would be to get a specific policy through parliament or Congress, for instance. Opposition can use the same amount of fiat for their counter proposal. So yeah, 15 minutes case building time. Don't try to argue as opposition, like, but the parliament wouldn't pass this policy, right? Or don't argue, but this policy is very difficult to be implemented, therefore you shouldn't fight for this policy. Because if that's the debate, there will be no debate at all, because there is nothing that you should argue for both sides, since opposition believe that this motion shouldn't appear in the very first place because of how difficult the parliament or Congress will be. But you can question the problem within the proposal, can question the benefits, the harms, or the practicalities of that proposal, but don't question the feasibility, whether that proposal can be passed or not. Opposition can use the same amount of fiat for their counter proposal. So if the government is allowed to ban smoking, because government explained there will be an X amount of resources for the government to ban smoking, opposition can explain that we don't want to ban smoking. We want to increase tax for smoking manufacturers. That is allowed because if opposition can explain the resources needed to increase tax for smoking manufacturers is below X amount that government have been stated, then that is allowed within the debate. Motion types. So there are a few types of motion. The first one is value judgment motion. Second type is policy motion. The third type is actor motion. And last but not least, time reset motion. In the value judgment motion, there will be wording like this house believe that THBT, which is a value judgment from a neutral observer's point of view, or this house supports or this house opposes THS or THO, which is a value judgment from a neutral observer's POV, usually assessing whether there are more reasons to support than otherwise. So it's a more of consideration benefit or harm, as opposed to this house belief that is still considering the benefit or harm, that is allowing for more other reasons to be included. Not saying that this house supports and this house opposes cannot include any other consideration than the benefit or harm, but I was just saying that this house supports and this house supports and this house opposes the directs and expects the debate more on a consideration of benefit and harm than any other considerations. The second motion type is policy motion. The wording is usually this house would, THW. It's a policy implementation by a specific actor, usually the state, the government, the parliament, what is the interest of the state that can be achieved through this policy or that policy, whether or not the government interest, value, knowledge, principle ground will be catered by that policy. Actor motion is this house as X. Usually that's the wording. The analysis is it can either be value judgment or policy from the point of view of a specific actor. Their main interest would be most relevant. So team that can win the debate is usually teams that can direct the analysis that they give to be within the best interest of the actor that they support. So if a team can explain this actor really cares about principal reasons because of ABC, then our analysis that this is principally correct for this actor should stand against any other teams in this round. Another type of motion is time reset motion. The wording is usually THR, or this house regrets, imagining what would happen if X had not existed. Would it be a better thing than when X currently exists right now? It requires counterfactual. So if you explain this house regrets the rise of private universities, not only you need to explain why private universities are bad and things are so much better if private universities had not existed. More than that, you should also explain what happened when there is no private universities. Probably there will be more investment from the state for education and tertiary access to that education. And that's a better counterfactuals in opposition. So provide counterfactual can be really helpful for you to win the debate. Another time reset motion is this house prefers, imagining a completely different world. This house prefers a world in which there is no dating app. So you need to imagine what would happen. Would people get romantic partners from just physical conventional interactions, or would there will be any other platforms, avenues that people can access to? That's the thing that you need to assess: the harms, the benefits, the comparisons, the practicalities, and so on. Next, about definitions. You should not put dictionary definitions. Your judges are assumed to understand what the words mean. So if the motion is this house would ban fast food industry, don't explain what is the definition of fast food industry based on Oxford Dictionary, because that's not necessary. That's redundant. Your judge must know what is a fast food industry mean. You need to also avoid creative definitions. So when the motion is this house as ICC would prosecute crimes against environment, ICC here is International Criminal Court, not International Cricket Council. So be contextual in deciding your definition. Debates can also assume to happen in the immediate present, not in the past or in the future. So don't put your argument in a specific time frame. Don't say, we're only going to debate about this 20 years from now, or we're only going to explain the benefit and harms of this motion between 1970 and 1990, because that doesn't make sense. Debate should be general, not in Indonesia, unless stated explicitly. So if the motion is as developing countries, this house would ban ecotourism. That's for general developing countries, not for Indonesia only. In the case that specific knowledge is required to have a functional debate, an information slide will be provided prior to the release of the motion. So you don't have to worry about not knowing anything about the motion, because as the CAP, we will present you the information, the basic stuff that you need to grasp with your understanding for you to operate that motion. If anything is unclear about a motion, please approach the Chief Adjudication, me, and Elgar only. Should not in any circumstances Google or ask your coach or ask your friends. That is not your teammate. That's not allowed ethically and philosophically and practically. Only leader of opposition that can challenge but advise against. So it's only the last resort. Leader of opposition can challenge a motion, can challenge a definition presented by Prime Minister, only if Prime Minister really not contextual, really inaccurate in making that definition in the very first place. Adjudication, you need to do holistic judging. This is for the judge. Present the comparative. You should not be mathematical, only count how many arguments is said, or very technical on how many minutes that you spend on stage, because some smaller quantity arguments, I mean, 2 arguments can win the debate against 5 arguments if 2 arguments are explained elaboratively. Meanwhile, the 5 arguments are just one-liner, or should not be also very technical. You should not count, oh, this speaker explained this argument with 6 minutes, with 6 minutes elaborations. Then this should be a very good argument. That's not how you judge the debate. And based on what is said, which requires response, some responses might not be adequate. It may only mitigate to a degree, not completely debunking or um, negating all of the analysis given by the previous speakers. This is also very useful for the speakers. Make sure that if you want to give response, make sure that's a strong and effective response. Scores and feedback. You will use UDC speaker and judge skills that will be attached later. We'll present this judge skills and UDC speaker skills in the WhatsApp group for the participants and the judges. The range of feedback is 1 to 10. The adjudicator did not pay any attention at all or cannot explain the decision at all, give them 1. Or if they are really good, the explanation was very comprehensive, solidly reasonable in justifying their ranks, and appropriate for the tournament's grand final, then give them 10. You should also put the score on the feedback, not based on the based on the rankings. You think that, oh, I get 4th and I feel sad, I need to do my revenge by giving this judge 1. Don't do that. You need to base your feedback score on their OAs and inputs. Yep, I think that is all. So thank you, everyone, and good luck for the next 2 days. See you.